Hello, my name is Maddie Gamash, and I am answering these questions as part of my CareerFoundry data analytics program. This is for task 5.7, part 2, interview practice. So I have 5 questions, and I will be answering them just as if I were in an interview. Question number 1. What does the CRISP DM methodology for data mining entail, and what does the data analyst do in each step? So the CRISP DM methodology, stands for Cross-Industry Standard Process for Data Mining, provides a structured approach to data mining projects. Consists of 6 key steps, and as a data analyst, I would play a crucial role in each step. So step 1 is business understanding. This is where I would collaborate with any of the stakeholders and grasp the business objectives and the requirements that we have and any constraints we might see. And hopefully by asking the right questions, I would be able to define the project goals and understand the context of the problems we're addressing. Step 2 is data understanding. So this is where I would explore and analyze the available data and to better comprehend its structure, the quality of it, and the content of it. So this would involve assessing the data relevance and identifying any data quality issues. And this is where we would gain some basic insights through statistical summaries and some basic visualization techniques. And then this allows us to move to step 3, which is data preparation. So this is where I would transform the raw data into a suitable format for analysis. I would clean the data. So this involves selecting the relevant variables, and addressing any missing values and any duplicates, and cleaning the data for any other errors or inconsistencies. And then this allows us to move to step 4, which is modeling. So this is where I would employ the various modeling techniques based on the project goals and the data characteristics. So this would involve selecting the appropriate algorithms and creating and testing any data sets. And we would want to fit the models to the data and optimize all of their parameters. And then this allows us to go to step 5, which is the evaluation. So this is where we assess the quality and the effectiveness of the developed models. And this is where we would want to evaluate the model performance by testing the data sets and considering any and all practical implications from it. So this is where we could also perform some comparisons between the models, just so we can ensure that we choose the right one to align with the business objectives. And step 6 is deployment. So this is where I would work with others on the team to deploy the models into the necessary programs. That we would want to integrate the models and create proper documentation of all the steps we did to achieve this. And we would also want to establish some monitoring and maintenance procedures. So ongoing performance tracking would be crucial to ensure that the models continue to meet the desired objectives. And so throughout this whole process, throughout all 6 steps, I would be able to adapt as necessary and collaborate with the stakeholders and communicate with the stakeholders, and leveraging my expertise as well as others on the team to derive meaningful insights from the project and hopefully gain some business value from it. So step 2 is explain what needs to be done before you can forecast time series. In other words, what does the time series analysis involve? So time series analysis is a multi-step process that precedes forecasting, and I'll give a basic overview of it. So firstly, we would want to collect all the historical data of the variables we want to forecast. And we would want to ensure that they have some regular time intervals and some seasonality. So after we collect the data, we can clean it a little bit and address any errors we see and any outliers that we can find. And do some further exploration and some visualization to identify any patterns and trends. And then we would want to test for some stationarity to determine if the data has a changing average or if it has any variance over time. And if needed, we can apply some transformations to the data to achieve stationarity. If we don't, if it already has stationarity, we don't need to do any transformations, and we can move right on to choosing the appropriate forecasting model. based on the characteristics. So popular models would be, something like the ARIMA, which is the autoregressive integrated moving average, as well as some exponential smoothing. And so once we choose which model is right for us, we fit the historical data and we decide its performance. We evaluate its performance. So we utilize that fitted model to generate forecasts for future time points. So basically, just that little overview captures the key tasks involved. But it is important to mention that more advanced techniques and more advanced model diagnostics can be applied depending on the complexity of the project and the time series analysis. Question 3 is, discuss the main principles of data ethics, as well as what companies or organizations could do to uphold these principles. So data ethics revolves around key principles and guidelines to responsibly use data. Companies can and should uphold these principles by prioritizing privacy and confidentiality, and being very transparent and accountable about their data practices. We would want to ensure fairness and any anti-discrimination or bias in algorithms. And we would want to obtain informed consent by responsibly sharing data and to responsibly share data of the users and everything like that. And we would want to carefully consider any ongoing ethical implications. So this involves a lot of data security, taking a lot of measures to maintain that data is secure. And we would want to continuously conduct any audits and tests for any bias or discrimination that we see, and regular reviewing and updating policies all the time to align with evolving standards. There's a lot to it, so things change quite rapidly. So we would just want to make sure that we are always up to date on the most recent data ethic standards. And so by adhering to just those basic steps, companies can build trust with their consumers and hopefully contribute to a ethical and responsible data practice. Question 4. Imagine you're an analyst at a financial service company and you have some concerns about bias in the way a predictive model was measured. How would you raise your concerns with your manager? Make some suggestions for how to avoid measurement bias in the future. So if I had concerns about bias in a predictive model measurement, let's say at a financial service company, I would approach my manager. I would want to schedule a meeting with my manager. I would approach her and want to schedule a meeting. And in that meeting, I would come prepared for presenting evidence for this potential bias. I would explain my concerns in a clear and non-confrontational, very respectful manner, and just want to emphasize the importance of fairness and accuracy in predictive modeling. So to avoid measurement bias in the future, I would suggest some actions, maybe suggesting using some diverse training and incorporating some bias assessment techniques that we could use. We could conduct regular audits and engage our stakeholders that come from diverse backgrounds as well. This would allow us to implement some education and some training programs that could allow us to help avoid this in the future. And the goal for this conversation would be to open a collaborative and respectful conversation to find solutions to promote a fair and unbiased predictive modeling practice, because it's important. And question 6, explain the difference between regression and classification models in predictive analysis. When would you use one of the models over the other? So regression models are used when the target variable is numeric and the goal is to predict a specific value, such as like house prices or sales figures. On the other hand, classification models are used when the target variable is categorical, and the objective is to assign instances to predefined categories. So like spam detection or disease diagnostics. The choice between regression and classification models depends on the nature of the target variable and the specific problem at hand. So if the goal is to predict a numeric value, regression models are suitable, while the classification models are employed for categorizing instances. So it's also important and essential to consider the problem and the data characteristics of the problem to determine the most appropriate model for the analysis. And that is all. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.